Welcome all to the course Web Design for Beginners. I am Nipuni Chandimali and I am a lecturer at University of Moratuwa. Today we are going to discuss about how to create tables in HTML. Before moving forward, let's take a moment to revise the standard color coding scheme we have been using throughout our course. After today's lesson, you should be able to add a table to a website using HTML. Recall an instance where you have used tables. Why did you use tables then? We use tables to represent data in a more organized manner with the objective of giving a good overview of our data to the viewers. Similarly, we can use tables in our website to represent data. Then the users of our website can get a quick and a clear overview of the data we have presented rather than going through a large chunk of text. So you know the importance of using tables to represent data in our website. Now let's see how we can add a table in HTML. A table in HTML consists of three parts: table rows, table headers, and table data. Table rows represent a single row of data in a table. Table headers are used to specify headings of the table data. And table data is used to specify a cell in the table which contains actual data. Now let's create our first table in HTML. This is the table I am going to create. Here you can see there are information about 3 students, and the table headings are the ID, name, and age. There are 4 rows. So let's see how we can implement this in HTML. To add a table in HTML, we have to use the table tag. Then I'm going to add the table rows. To add table rows, we have to use the tr tag. So my first row contains the table headings. So I'm going to create the table row and then I'm going to add the table headings. To add the table headings, I have to use the th tag. What is the first table heading in our example? It's the ID. Then the next table heading is the name. The third table heading is the age. Here you can see the table headings are wrapped in between the starting th tag and the ending th tag. Now I'm going to save my content and view it in the browser. Here you can see table headings are added. Now I'm going to add the table data. In the second row, I have information about the first student. So I'm going to create another table row. The first cell contains the student ID of the first student. To add table data, I have to use the td tag. First cell contains her student ID. So in between the starting td tag and the ending td tag, I'm going to add her student ID. The second cell contains her name. She is Emma. The third cell contains her age, which is 21. Now I'm going to save my content again and view it in the browser. Here you can see the information about the first student is added. Now let's add information about the second student. There, the third row contains information about the second student. I'm going to add another new tr tag, and in between the starting and ending tr tag, I'm going to add information about the second student. Again, I'm going to use the table data tag to give the information within the cell. His ID is 2 and his name is Sam and his age is 20. Again, I'm going to save my content and view it in the browser. Similarly, we can add information about the third student in the next row. ID is 3, name is Jane, and age is 22. Save the content and I'm going to view it in the browser. Here you can see the information we added to our table are displayed as a table in the browser. You may wonder why there are no borders in this table. That's because we didn't specify any borders when we were creating this table. Don't worry, let's see how to add borders to our table when we are discussing CSS. With that, we have come towards the end of today's lesson. Before winding up, let's take a moment to have a quick recap of what we discussed today. By using tables in our website, we can present our data in a more organized manner. We can add a table to our website with the table tag. And table rows are specified by the tr tag and table headers are specified by the th tag. And finally, the table data is specified by the td tag. With that, we are going to wind up for today. Let's meet again in our next lesson. Thank you.
Welcome all to the course Web Design for Beginners. I am Ishara Devendra and I am a lecturer at the University of Morato. Today we are going to discuss about how to create HTML forms. Before moving forward, let's take a moment to get familiar with the standard color coding scheme we have been using throughout this course. From our previous lessons, we already discussed HTML to tell the browser how the content, that means the text, images, video we want to have on our website should be displayed. To do this, we use HTML tags. In today's lesson, we are going to discuss how to design an HTML form on a web page using another set of tags. Think we want to fill a form in a bank to open an account. There you can find several boxes to fill some values, or you can select some values according to your choice. Likewise, on web pages, you can also find different forms such as application forms, registration form, sign-up forms, feedback forms, and so on. So when we are designing web pages, we can add HTML forms to allow user to enter data. Now let's have a look at what is an HTML form. HTML form is used to collect user input, or else we can say an HTML form is a selection of a document that contains controls such as text fields, password fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, submit buttons, menus, etc. A web form or HTML form on a web page allows user to enter data that is sent to a server for processing. Web users fill out the forms using checkboxes, radio boxes, or text fields. Here you can see a sign-up form on a web page. There are text boxes, drop-down lists, checkboxes, and buttons to submit the forms. You can update your data accordingly by using this sign-up form. Similarly, We can make different types of HTML forms on our web pages using text fields, password fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, submit buttons, or menus. Now, let's have a look at some HTML tags we need to create a form. First, we have a form tag. The HTML form element is used to create an HTML form for user input. So this form element is a container for different types of input elements such as text fields, checkboxes, radio buttons, submit buttons, etc. So we can add form elements accordingly in between the form tag. Let's have a look at the input element. The HTML input element is the most used form element. An input element can be displayed in many ways depending on the type of attribute. So we'll see what are those input elements that we can use when creating HTML forms. This table represents some examples for input elements. Here you can see the type attributes and their descriptions. So I'll go through one by one. The first one is the text input. It displays a single line text input field in a form. The next one is the radio input type. It displays a radio button for selecting one of many choices. Next, we have a checkbox input type. It displays a checkbox for selecting 0 or many choices. So, when we consider the difference between radio buttons and checkboxes, the radio buttons are used when there is a list of 2 or more options and the user must select exactly one choice. The checkboxes are used when there are a list of options and the user may select any number of choices, including 0, 1, or several. So this is the difference between the checkboxes and the radio buttons. The next input type is submit. It displays a submit button for submitting the form. The button input type also displays a clickable button in a form. Let's create an HTML form. So you can select different input types according to your requirement. In this form, you can see 2 text inputs to add the first name and the last name, and 2 radio buttons to select gender, and 2 checkboxes to select the left type. And at the bottom of the form, you can see the submit button. Let's add the text field into a form. In this form, you can see there are 2 text input for first name and last name. So first we can add a label using label tag as first name, and then we can add the text field by using input type equal text tag. So similarly, we can add the text field to get the input for last name. Let's add the radio button to our form. First, we can add a label as gender, and then we can add a radio button by using input type equal radio tag. Then a label represents the option name of the radio button. Similarly, we can add another radio button to our form. Here we can use 2 radio buttons to give the options to select the gender. So this is the example how to add a radio button. Now we'll add checkboxes to our form. Similarly, we can add the labels, and using input type equal checkbox tag, we can add any number of selections. According to the given choices, the user can select their choice. So this is how we can add the checkboxes into our form. Finally, we'll add a button into our form using input type equal button tag. And we can give a name to that button as submit. So from this example, you can see how to add the submit button into our form. So let's see how this form is displayed in our browser. Here I'm going to use a new HTML file. This is how we can create our HTML form. So first I give a name to our form as HTML form, and then within the form tag I already entered two labels to give the input for the first name and the last name, and two input type equal text tags to input the first name and the last name. And then I use input type equal radio tag to add the radio buttons into our form. And then I use input type equal checkbox tag to input checkboxes into our form. Finally, here I added an input type equal button tag to add a button into our form. Let's see how this form will appear in our browser. This is how our HTML form is appeared in our browser. First, you can see two text fields to enter the first name and the last name. And then you can see two radio buttons to give the gender as a male or female. And then you can see two checkboxes to give the choices. And then finally you can see a submit button to submit this form. So similarly, you can create any type of HTML form by using text fields, radio buttons, checkboxes, and the buttons. In summary, we can say input type text tag is used to add the text field, and input type radio tag is used to add radio buttons. Input type checkbox tag is used to add checkboxes, and input type button tag is used to add buttons. So by using these input elements, you can create any type of HTML form. With that, we have come to the end of today's lesson. See you in the next lesson. Thank you. Welcome all to the course Web Design for Beginners. I am Ishara Devendra and I am a lecturer at the University of Morato. In today's lesson, we are going to discuss the HTML content models. Before moving forward, let's take a moment to get familiar with the standard color coding scheme we have been using throughout this course. First of all, we'll see what is the content model. The content model refers to the set of rules that define what type of content each element is allowed to have. Mostly, this translation into what other elements are allowed to be nested inside which other elements. Now you know the idea of what is a content model. Let's see what is defined by the HTML content model. Every HTML element has a default display value, depending on what type of each element it is. So, there are two display values as block and inline. Prior to the modern HTML specification, HTML elements were either block level or inline elements. Modern HTML specification splits these two content models into 7 models. However, in practical terms, still those 7 models are falling into the same traditional categories as block level and the inline elements. So, this is a practical example for understanding block elements and inline elements. So, in this first example, you can see within the body, there are 2 separate blocks. And also within one block, you can see another HTML tag to create a hyperlink. It is displayed in one line. In the second example, you can see the content is included in separate blocks and some content is in one line side by side. So here you can see there are 2 ways of displaying values. Let's discuss them one by one. First, we'll discuss the block element. Block elements are large building blocks of your web page. When displayed, the browser automatically adds a line break before and after the block element. which takes up all variable widths. Here, the height of the block element is calculated by browser automatically based on the volume of its content. I'll explain the first three examples. So the div tag is used for define a section of a document. And this form tag is define the HTML form. And these H1 to H6 tags define HTML headers. So these are some of examples that we can use as the block tags. So I'm not going to explain each tag since you are familiar with some of these tags. In this image also you can see how these block elements appear on a website. Now let's have a look at inline elements. Inline elements are used to mark parts of the content of elements. The width of an inline element equals the amount of content. So unlike the block elements, the browser does not add a line break before and after an inline element. If multiple line items follow each other, they are on the same line and these are moved to another row as needed. So these are some examples for inline tags. In here, the tag A creates a hyperlink and the tag with EM defines the selected text and this tag IMG defines an image. So these are the tags that can be used as inline elements. So in this image also you can see how these inline elements appear on a website. Let's see the difference between block element and inline elements. The inline elements contain only data and other inline elements. The block elements may contain data, other block elements, and inline elements. Inline elements create smaller structures while block elements create larger structures. So the last one is inline elements do not begin from a new line while block elements begin from a new line. So with this, I think you can get an idea about these two types and their differences. As I mentioned before, in modern HTML, specification replaces those two content model definitions into 7 models. The reason it's still practical to group them into just those two is that they align very well with the existing CSS rules. Here you can see the 7 modern HTML content models as metadata content, flow content, sectioning content, heading content, phrasing content, embedded content, and the interactive content. Let's discuss them one by one. So this is the first content model and it is called as the metadata content. The metadata content model and it steps up the presentation of behavior of the rest of the content. Here are some example tags that can be used as metadata content. The second one is flow content. These are the elements that would be included in the normal flow of the document. Here are some example tags that can be used as flow content. The third one is the sectioning content that defines the scope of headings and footers, and these are some examples. Fourth one is heading content that defines the headers of a section, which can either be explicitly marked up with sectioning elements or implied by the heading content itself. Here are the examples. The next one is phrasing content. The text of the document as well as elements used to mark up the text within paragraph level structures are defined with this content model. So these are the examples. The next one is embedded content, and any content that imports other resources into the document is defined as embedded content. As the last one, any content specifically intended for user interaction is defined by interactive content. You can find examples for these two content models here. Although these models are divided into 7 content models, as far as HTML coding is concerned, all of them are falling into either doc elements or inline elements. As a summary, we can say there are two display values as doc and inline. A block level element always starts on an inline and takes up the full width available. An inline element does not start on an inline and it only takes up as much width as necessary. So finally, we discussed about there are 7 modern HTML content models, and we have already discussed each of them. And with that, we have come to the end of today's lesson. See you in the next lesson, and thank you.
Hello students, I am Upulanka Sirik, lecturer at the Institute of Moratuwa and a former software engineer. Under this topic, you will learn and experience how to handle multimedia such as images, videos and audio clips with HTML. We are using this color coding to make it easy for you to understand the lecture during this course. These core areas will be covered with activities under our topic multimedia. Multimedia types, important image formats, inserting images to HTML, inserting videos to HTML, inserting audios to HTML. Let's answer the big question. What is multimedia? Multimedia comes in many different formats. It can be almost anything you can hear, see, like images, music, sound, videos, records, films, animations, games, and more. Web pages often contain multimedia elements of different types and formats. Therefore, multimedia is a mixture of different forms of media. These are 5 main multimedia types. If we take the YouTube web platform as an example, you can identify all of them. Video information as text, thumbnails as graphics, notification sounds like audios, content as videos, and sliding menu as an animation. When we are inserting images into our websites, we have to consider their formats. Developers use different formats for different purposes. If we want high quality output and we have enough space, we can use TIFF images. If we consider the loading time and resource availability, the JPEG format is ideal. If we need transparency effect, we can use PNG images. We can get animations by using GIF images. Now we are going to take our first step towards inserting an image into our HTML web page. To insert an image, we have to use the img tag. This tag is empty and it contains attributes only. img tag does not have a closing tag. The img tag acts as a reservation. It holds the space for the image that we are going to display. You can see the tag has 2 required attributes. The src source attribute is for the path to the image file. This can be a URL or a file path. By using the alt attribute, we can text description to the image. If the user cannot view the image due to a slow internet connection or an error in the image file, the alt attribute will be very useful. Additionally, we can use the style attribute to define the width and height of an image. As a best practice, we specify the width and height of an image. If width and height are not specified, the web page might flicker while the image loads. Let's go through these 5 examples. According to the first example, we are going to display an image without the description. First, I am going to create an empty folder and copy my image here. Also, let's create an HTML file in the same folder and give it a meaningful name. Inside the HTML file, we have to define the body and other essential tags. We can add a subheading with an h2 tag as well. Under the subheading, we can display our image by using the image tag. Make sure to type the image file with the format. Now we can open our HTML file with our browser to see the output. According to the second example, we have to deploy the description of our image. Let's add an alt attribute and complete the requirement. To avoid flickering, we can include the style attribute. We can set the perfect width and height for the image as well. According to the third example, the width is 500 pixels and the height is 600 pixels. What if the image is saved in another folder? Let's create a subfolder and rename it as images. We can move our image file into that folder. Managing multimedia resources file is also considered a good practice method. Now we have to modify the image file path to accomplish the fourth example. The source attribute is not only the file path, we can use URLs as well. Let's modify our code by adding an URL for an image to complete the fifth example. We successfully completed inserting an image file into the HTML web page. Now we are going to learn the procedure for video clips. To display a video clip in our HTML form, we have to use the video tag. To avoid flickering, we have to set the height and width. To start the video automatically without any user interactions, we can use the autoplay attribute. Sometimes it is better to have video player controls such as play, pause, and volume adjustments for the video clip. To add video player controls, we can use the control attribute. Let's go through these 3 examples. First, I'm going to create an empty folder and copy my video clips here. Also, let's create an HTML file in the same folder and give it a meaningful name. Inside the HTML file, we have to define the body and other essential tags. We can add the subheading with the h2 tag as well. According to the first example, we have to display the video clip and need to set it into autoplay. Let's create a video tag and set the height and width. The source tag contains the video file, path, and the type of the video file. Let's define the source tag. Our video file name is movie and the file type is MP4. By adding the autoplay attribute, we can play the video clip at the start of the web page. Let's open our HTML page with the browser and see the output. If we don't want to play the video clip with sounds, we can mute it by using the muted attribute. Let's modify our HTML code and see the output according to the second example. We can display the video clip with video player controls such as play, pause, and volume adjustments. We have to use the control attribute to get that output. Let's modify our HTML page and see the output through the browser. We successfully completed inserting images and video clips into our HTML web page. Now we are going to learn the procedure for audio clips. We can use the audio element to insert audio clips. The process is very similar to video insertion. If we add the controls attribute, we can see audio controls like play, pause, and volume adjustments. To start an audio file automatically, we can use the audio attribute after the controls attribute. If you want to mute audio clip, muted attribute can be used after the autoplay attribute. Let's go through these two examples. First, I'm going to create an empty folder and copy my audio clip here. Also, let's create an HTML file in the same folder and give it a meaningful name. Inside the HTML file, we have to define the body and other essential tags. According to the first example, we have to insert the audio clip with player controls. Now we have to create the audio element. For the source attribute, we have to add the audio name, which is the song with the format. Also, we have to define the tag as well. To set the audio play automatically, we have to add the autoplay attribute. We successfully completed inserting images, videos, and audio clips into an HTML web page. Thank you.
Welcome all to the course Web Design for Beginners. I'm Nikuni Chandamali and I'm a lecturer at University of Moratuwa. Today we are going to discuss about adding links to a website using HTML. Before moving forward, let's take a moment to revise the standard color coding scheme we have been using throughout our course. First, let's recall a practical scenario where we have seen links in HTML. I'm sure all of you have seen the ESPN Cricinfo website. In the homepage of the ESPN Cricinfo website, you can see the headings related to many news articles. Here, once you click on a particular news article, you are directed to the main news article. Have you ever thought how this was made possible? This was done by adding links to our website. Now let's see how we can add a hyperlink to our website. To do that, first I am going to open my HTML file. To add hyperlinks in HTML, we have to use the anchor tag. The anchor tag is denoted by the letter A. The most important attribute of the anchor tag is the href. Attribute indicates the link's destination. In this example, I want to send the users who click this link to University of Moratuwa website. To do that, I have to give the URL of the UOM website as the value of the href attribute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to the University of Moratuwa website and then I'm going to copy its URL. After that, I'm going to give the URL as the value for the href attribute. Then we have to give the link text. That's what the users of the website see. Here I am giving click here as the link text. Now I am going to save my changes and view it in the browser. Now you can see the link text is there in the browser or in my website. If I click here, I am directed towards the University of Moratuwa website. In the previous example, you could see the link document, which was the University of Moratuwa website, was open on the current browser tab. Think I want to open it in a new tab. Then how can I achieve that? To do that, I have to use another attribute of the href tag. That is the target attribute. Now let's see how we can use the target attribute to open the link document in a new tab. Again, I'm going to open my .html file. Now I'm going to use the target attribute. Here, my requirement is to open the link document in a new tab. To do that, I have to use blank as the value for the target attribute. Now I am going to save my changes. And let's view what is the output in the browser. I clicked on the link text. Now you can see that uom.lk website was opened in a new tab. Before winding up, let's take a moment to have a quick recap of what we discussed today. We discussed by using the anchor tag, we can add HTML links. With HTML links, we can allow the users to go from one document to the other. With that, we have moved towards the end of today's session. Let's meet again in our next lesson. Thank you.